give a huge welcome to the podium to give us the opening address of the BT Young Scientist and Technology 2023, Uachtaráin na hÉireann, President Michael D. Higgins.
That's blinding me.
I'll see if I can get it adjusted.
Well, nach ínta gan radé go bhfuil muid an anbheith an seir ocaidseil level persanta. May I say what a great pleasure it is that we're all back again at the Young Scientist, and that we're able to be here, that you are all able to be here in person. So first of all, I want to offer my very best wishes to all of the students participating in this year's Young Scientist and Technology exhibition. And I also want, in a special way, to say a thank you to all of the teachers in the different schools who stand behind the Young Scientists year after year, and all the parents who are so encouraging. I think, and as well, to enable an event like this to take place is a huge organisational challenge. So trislim le gachtan a bheith buinte acha leis an ocaid seo éagrú is a cur le céile. Mar a gúirt mé cuirim go grás bánach tar na daltaíteach lech a páirt, agus na tismóiris na móntóiríad san na bhí cabhrach glob, agus is ínta chun redé go bhfuil muid an anbheith seo in áiríreach gan a bheith virtual. May I just say as well that this in-person competition, after 2 years of virtual events, there is a sense of excitement about it taking its original form. It's 60 years since two physics researchers, Reverend Dr. Tom Burke and Dr. Tony Scott, came across the concept of science fairs while they were conducting research in New Mexico. Science fairs, and they were convinced that this hands-on version of celebrating science was something that students in Ireland would benefit. And let us say immediately how important it is to celebrate people with vision like that. And 60 years later, what a legacy Tony Scott and Tom Burke have realised and made possible for tens of thousands of students. Since the first competition in 1965, hundreds of thousands of science students have demonstrated their ingenuity and genius. And this year, 1,700 projects were submitted, from which 550 projects were selected to go through to compete here in the RDS. Congratulations to all those who've made it to the competition. And I must say as well that I'm delighted that Dr. Tony Scott is with us, and that the first ever winner, Dr. John Monaghan, is also with us here today, volunteering their expertise as judges. Fáilte ó Crí Robe. Projects this year cover a range of fascinating topics in applied science, technology, and also in basic curiosity as to how things work and might be made better. I think there are, interestingly, of course, the great obvious topics of health and climate change and ecology are offering a range of new and applied technologies, and they are represented. And as a sociologist, I'm very pleased to see that this year there are a large proportion of this year's finalists, about just less than 200, are dealing with issues in the social and behavioural area. Agus cuir sé áthas airm go bhfuil méid trógraí tháinig isteach os na Gaeltachtaí agus os na Scoile Lán Gaeltacha. Now, it's a great time to be a young scientist or to be interested in science. Challenging, yes, but so potentially fulfilling to know that the choices that you have an opportunity of making will have effects that are important, not just for your own time, but for the very possibility of life in all its diverse forms on our planet, but also, as well as that, the very sustainability of our capacity to live on our planet. So may I suggest to all of you that as young scientists and interested in science, you will be at your best in achieving the greatest fulfillment for yourself and others when you locate the contribution that you will go on to make within a commitment to be concerned and contributing global citizens. For science is such an important and influential discipline, one which has a pivotal role to play in responding to the great humanitarian challenges of our time, and which has the potential to make the greatest contribution to understanding the complexity, sustaining and making our world more fulfilling for us all, peaceful, existing with nature and each other. For science has in recent times had such an important effect on our life. For example, it has dramatically changed our means of communication, the way we work, our food, our methods of transportation, and indeed through medical research and practice, even the length and quality of life itself. Science has come to our aid with vaccines in responding to pandemics. There is no better example of the positive role which science has played than in its providing irrefutable scientific evidence on climate change. In taking on that responsible role, amongst other contributions, science has helped to inform a social, economic, and political debate on, for example, the urgent need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and thus remain within the planet's ecological boundaries, in protecting the Earth and all the life on it from the catastrophic consequences of global warming and biodiversity loss. I think, however, the delivery and impact of science is never neutral. For example, science, as we need no reminding, can be employed to generate ever more sophisticated weapons and instruments of death and destruction that are used to generate fear for populations while supporting the insatiable drive of military-industrial complexes for profits, even if this is at the cost of undermining democratic accountability through corruption, unaccountable lobbying, and bribery incontinence, where millions are starving and societies are being divided over access to resources for life itself. But I have faith in the ability of young people interested in science, young Irish scientists, to locate their gifts, their brilliance, in a moral context that is willing to work for the benefit of all humanity beyond any well-earned potential personal rewards. So, and may I suggest to you that you have such an example of groundworking work, such as that of Nobel laureate William C. Campbell from Donegal, from Ramelton, whose research on river blindness led to the drug ivermectin, which, having been made available to all by America in 1987, 30 years later, led to 3 billion ivermectin treatments being delivered, river blindness being eliminated in Central and South America and significantly reduced in Africa. Dr. Campbell is in the great tradition of Dr. Jonas Salk, who believed that scientific discoveries should benefit all without borders, fiscal, state, or income. For knowledge is for sharing, and the practice of science and the appropriate delivery of its work through appropriate technology should flow to all unimpeded by boundaries of income. The great Irish scientist Mike Cooley wrote, "Science and technology is not given. It is made possible by people like us. If it's not doing for us what we want, we have a right and a responsibility to change it." That great Tuam-born committed scientist and author, Mike Cooley, whom I knew, understood what a moral outrage it had become, with the great failure that all the material resources that were available, that our boundless capacity for creativity and innovation, and the fruits of science and technology could remain focused in so many parts of the world, not on ending or the elimination of preventable of global hunger or famine, or the promotion or preservation of peace, or indeed on reducing inequality, but rather on the pursuit of ever more deadly technologies as instruments of war, and indeed how science has often been abused too in the promotion through irresponsible advertising of a model of consumption and yes, insatiable accumulation as the most desirable, even inevitable version of a life of fulfillment. As Zygmunt Bauman put it, it was an invitation to become consumed in our consumption, our self-absorption. And ugly suggestions such as that our nature was one to be competitive and aggressive rather than cooperative, as it is in other species. Yes, the fruits of science, they have revolutionized life, enabled tremendous social change with humankind benefiting from scientific advances in so many areas of life. Yet we must recognize that the misuse of scientific knowledge, however, has been and can be disastrous for us all. To you young people could say, the great delivery of science and technology made possibilities offered them to us in the 20th century which were never achieved. And it is important in the second decade of the 21st century that we achieve for all in a universal way the appropriate benefits of science and technology. And therefore it is vital not to be indifferent to the responsibilities of scientists, to enhance a moral consciousness of the importance of working within an ethical framework, a consciousness that must be central to any scientific endeavor, one that can help to guide our use and application of a scientific discovery. And science itself, we must never forget, is a method shared with others, one that involves cooperative work, sharing of purposes, as well as the joy of discoveries, even serendipitous discoveries. Science, then, I have said, is never neutral in its purpose or application. How its fruits are used and distributed is one of the tests of our humanity and civilization, our ethics, our times. Even to me, I think it's fair to say it is a species test when we're speaking about biodiversity. Governments, peoples, and corporations have to work together to cooperate to ensure that the fruits of science contribute solutions to the great global social and economic and ecological challenges we are now facing. And what has to be recognized is our burning planet. Seek to advance the possibilities of fulfillment for all that are there beyond the narrow provision of a source of wealth for any single individual or corporation. Our planet has been brought to a point of crisis by our agency and our indifference to unrestrained accumulation, concentration of ownership, opposition to such regulation as would be in the public interest. And we have wasted so much capacity. The social institution of science has evolved as one of the most powerful, highly influential and sought-out institutions. But it is now undergoing major changes owing to globalization, transformations brought about by the transition of industrial to post-industrial societies, realization of undeniable new and emerging global threats, such as the ones I've mentioned, climate change, pandemics, and war. Young scientists, technologists must be conscious as to where their work will be applied. The moral choice will help us all. For example, if it goes right, they can recover and restore our connection to nature. Crucially, there is a debate too as to how science should be funded. Science, I suggest, must be allowed its freedom to discover in the interests of us all. Too often a narrow utilitarian approach has attempted to coerce an explicit socio-political and economic usage of science. Perhaps an example of this is the pressure from vested interest, which has often been applied on European research policy to achieve an excessive emphasis on what is called securing Europe's global competitiveness. Europe's science policy has to have a higher standard, a higher aim, a higher goal, and Horizon Europe can and must be allowed to deliver it, properly funded and applied as universally as possible. And now then I suggest, in all of this, having said this, now is a great time to be a scientist. And as I look around and see all these young people I can't see them very directly because of the light, but there it is. You have to allow me that. As I look around, and I'll see more of you later, but I've always thought as I was preparing this speech of the energy that you have now and the intellectual curiosity that you have. And I think back to when I was that age, and I say, use that gift of life and energy and curiosity and intellectual capacity in a way that gives not you only personal fulfillment, but fulfillment with others, and have all the joys and friendships that go with it. I think it goes very, very well, if you like, if in a way, all this natural enthusiasm that is there to be global citizens and to talk about the global issues that young people are telling us, and the emphasis that they have on friendship, these good things that are all represented in the projects. So may I suggest to each and every one of you that you will be remembered and appreciated all the more when you are working to ensure that the results of science and technology are allowed to flow for the benefit of all, with a commitment to ecological responsibility and inclusivity. So offer your abilities, your energies, your life, your science and technology capacity where it can have the best effect for all. And it is so needed that you do so. In a few weeks, 2 weeks' time, I will go to Senegal to discuss food security. I believe that the appropriate science and cooperation with indigenous wisdom and cultural practices within a new model can lead to a transformation in continents such as Africa, where it can reduce hunger and poverty through food security, ecological responsibility, deliver healthy conditions and universal basic services, including education and healthcare, and achieve the connection between economy, society, ecology, and culture, and justice that we so urgently need and cannot postpone. And I look forward in the future to reading of you young scientists, being like William Campbell, working for the benefit of all, not only at home, but in Africa and South America and Asia. And I also feel as well that you will, in fact, that you will be, people will be speaking of you, of having been concerned to deliver the best at home and abroad that science and technology has made possible in your training. So, and I encourage you all to help each other and cooperate in advancing the truly emancipatory potential of science for society and for all of life. May your participation in this year's Young Scientists drive your interest and determination to continue to play a fulfilling role in science, its application, its delivery for the betterment of all on our shared vulnerable planet. All I have to say is Trislim liv Eliog, gach dalt agus scalatog lacoport, gach dinivicorog, bergach banat. And my advice is, stay curious for life and protect it. Slán agis berban. Young Scientist 2023 is declared open.